Hey there, happy Friday. Welcome to my studio here in New York City. I am Daniel Norton, and today we're going to talk about portraiture. So specifically a question I got about portraits. I talked about, like, if you want to capture a certain thing, somebody's funny, they're stern, whatever, you want to capture that in a portrait, you can use lighting things to figure that out. And the question was pretty simple and, a good one. What if you don't know that, right? It's a stranger, they just show up. Like, how do you know what it is that you want to bring out in them? Well, this is going to sound really simple, but I'll kind of expand on it a bit. You got to talk to them, right? This is the thing, right? If you're doing, high school portraits and people are like in the line and they step up and you pose them like this, and you take the picture and then move on, that's a different kind of thing, right? But if you're actually going to make a portrait of somebody, you want to interact with them. You don't want somebody to come in your studio, stand in front of the set, again, pose, and I talk about this, I know I make fun of it sometimes, but this is why I'm not so much this whole like pose book person. Oh, this pose for this, and men do this, and women do this, and This is not the way that I work with clients, because what I do is I have a conversation. You want to interact with your client, and through that, hopefully, if somebody is a jokey person, they will make jokes, right? If somebody is a stern person, you'll see that they'll be quieter. You can pick that up, and it will take time, and it will take some experience and just getting used to it as a portrait photographer. But I assume that most people that get into shooting portraits do it because they like to interact with people. So you probably already have the skills or knowledge to be able to look at somebody or talk to them once you're with them 5, 10, 15 minutes to get a feel for what they're like, their general vibe. And that's what you want to do. You can also ask them. That doesn't hurt either. If you are photographing somebody who's a known person, they probably have some kind of a, you can go on their Instagram or their official website or whatever and look to see what they've done, look at news articles that are written about them, look at things that they've been in, and you can get a sense for their personality through that. When I used to do a lot more editorial stuff for magazines, like where you make photographs of people like musicians and athletes, who I didn't know that much about, I would just do a little research on them before I went to see them, so I had something to say. This opens the gate. The hardest part about conversing with people usually is that first few minutes, right? Typically, I find people are usually very fake, and they have this they say your name 15 times because they read that in some book somewhere, or they do these weird things that people do when they first meet, because it's this awkward thing when people are first interacting. But once people kind of settle into it a little bit, they tend to be more open and just express themselves normally, and you need to be looking for that. You need to be ready for it, ready to react to it, ready to shift into it, and take that in. That's part of being a good portrait photographer. That is the skill, right? The rest of it can all just be real simple, right? A big, flat, big light is going to be fine for a lot of portraits if you get a great expression. And if you get something that really touches them and feels like it's right to them, or doesn't feel right to them, but maybe feels right to the people who know them well, right? So this is really what we want. And in order to do that, the simple answer is you need to interact. You can't just meet somebody. Now, you might be like, well, but they were 5 minutes with the CEO, 5 minutes with a celebrity. Well, first of all, I've talked about that before. Secondly, right, in those cases, you would know something about them. If they're a CEO or a celebrity or something like that, you'll be able to get some information about them ahead of time. If they are just somebody who you're photographing, you were hired to make a portrait of them, one way or the other, or they came to you because they needed a portrait for social media or LinkedIn or Tinder or whatever they need for it, you're going to spend some time with them. They come to this, in my case, they come to the studio. I've got a clothing rack, they can hang their stuff up. We talk about it, we kind of look at it, we have a cup of coffee, we have a little conversation. But, and we've been talking before this point too. We get comfortable, right? And then once we are comfortable, that's when they get on set and I start looking at the light and I talk about what we might do and all this other stuff. And you notice I haven't mentioned the camera yet, right? The camera comes out later. The camera is something that comes out once we're already settling and we have an idea of what we want to do, right? Then we take a couple, we look at them, I get their reaction, I look at their expressions when they look at the pictures. This gives me a feeling for what they like, what they don't like, what they are like, right? And this is going to be how you're going to move forward in your portrait shoot. So the long and short of it is, how do we know what the person's personality is like? Spend some time talking to them. Interact with your subjects. Become connected to them in that moment. It's a skill. You'll get better at it. The more portraits you take, you'll get faster at it. Start to pull things out of people. Just be yourself. Usually if people feel like you are being yourself, they're much more likely to be themselves. So hopefully that helped and gave some information for people who might be thinking that, especially if you haven't shot a lot of different people. Models and such, that's a whole different thing. And if you want me to talk more about that, let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications, and I'll see you next time.